Schwinn has been on a roll with their latest bike updates. I've already looked at the new aluminum comp and the new boundary, and today it's all about the new Taff. I've seen the Taff name mentioned a lot in comments, so I'm pleased with the opportunity to give this new update a look. But before I do, let me state that Schwinn sent this bike for me to review, but I'm not paid and this is not sponsored content. This is all my opinion, nothing has been pre-approved or pre-scripted. And now let's look at the bike, and the Taff has one visually obvious feature. That's the hunchback look of the top tube. This is a tall bike for a 19-inch frame, and that hump, it only adds to the tall perception. Even from overhead, it's up there. So we'll see how all that works out with the other components, many of which are newly updated. So let's take a look, starting with the grips. Schwinn has moved away from the previous comfort grips to round mountain bike lock-ons. Not as much padding, but lots of grip texture. Overhead, we can see bars that are wider than usually seen on big box bikes, though the Taff has always been an exception with 720mm bars. But the old bars were 25.4mm diameter, now a beefed up 31.8. And that means a new stem to accommodate them. Reduced from the old 90mm, the new stem is 70 with a 7-degree rise. Previously, the brake levers were integrated into the shifters. Well, those have been replaced with alloy standalone levers. And that puts the shifter on its own too. For this update, a Pro Rush 8-speed. And like the aluminum comp and the boundary, this new Taff also features a tapered head tube. And this is a big deal, and I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. Now on the other two new models, Schwinn full-on updated the forks, but on the Taff, the original fork was a zoom with wider than normal stanchions, so I don't know if update applies. I'm going to say modified. The new fork's crown looks equally strong, albeit with a smoother design. Both are void of any adjustment. However, the new fork support arch does have more heft, and the stanchions and seals, I would say at the least, on par with the previous model, but the offset's a major change, and more on that in a moment. And there are the usual double wall alloy wheels with Schwinn and Taff branding. These are 29-inch wheels wrapped with 29 by 2.25-inch WTB Starflight knobby tires. Now these aren't the usual mountain bike knobbies. These tires go for a smaller knobbies is more approach, and we'll see how they work out shortly. Alloy pedals instead of plastic, I believe the same as previously equipped. And the square taper crank arms, Pro Max 170mm. And those rotate a single 30-tooth narrow-wide chainring. It's so nice to finally be talking about 1x setups on budget-friendly bikes. The derailleur for this 1x, like the one on the boundary, is a Pro Rush, and it too has a clutch. For gearing, they opted for a freewheel over a cassette, 8 speeds, 13 to 40 tooth. Dual disc brakes stop the Taff, mechanical discs, and you can see the front wheel is a quick release, but the rear wheel is a bolt-on. Now, I've seen comments recently from people saying that they prefer bolt-on over quick release. Now, I don't agree, but if you're one of those people, here you go. Let's spend a minute talking about the Taff's frame, including the hunchback or hump or whatever you want to call it, that thing on the top tube. This frame is matte black with gray and silver graphics. It's aluminum, along with the seat post, which is also aluminum. That's capped with a newly updated saddle design. When looking at this frame, aside from the head tube taper, it appears to be practically identical to that of the previous version of the Taff, but there are some critical differences. To see those differences, we have to look at the math and the bike's geometry. The old Taff had a steep 71-degree head tube angle. The new update, a more trail-friendly 69-degree. And I mentioned fork offset earlier, previously 31mm, now updated to 51. And that hunchback top tube, that's changed from 645mm to 635. And I think that may explain this bike's tall standover. There's also a shorter seat stay to further modernize the ride, a full 20mm shorter. Even the bottom bracket drop has changed. To fully illustrate just how much is updated, I mean, look at all of this. That's a lot. But does it come together to make a better riding bike? Well, I don't have an old Taff to compare, but I can tell you what this version is like on the trail. My first observation is that for a fork that I know is heavy, this bike's front end feels light. And I think this is from the stiffer springs. This is stiffer than the boundary. On bumps, it kind of pushes upward. If you've ever been on a bike with a new air fork and you've ridden it for the first time uphill, you'll know what I'm talking about, that very light front end, but obviously not as smooth. And that stiffness difference between this and the boundary, likely quality variation more so than spec differences. Yeah, I would have hopped that if I would have been on one of my project bikes, but not on my first ride with the Taff. I'll take the cautious approach, and that's fine and more fitting of the market that this bike is aimed at. Not people looking to take drops or big jumps, but new riders wanting a taste of trail riding on a limited budget. And the new geometry, like that on the aluminum comp and the new boundary, very much in the usable realm, as good as most entry-level local bike shop bikes, and probably better than some. Now to the elephant in the room, how does it climb? Well, I expected with these small knobbies that there would be noticeably less rolling resistance. I figured that, combined with the new gearing, would make climbs significantly easier. Well, that wasn't my experience. Now it is slightly easier to make seated climbs than with the boundary in its new 1x7, but really not a massive difference. That said, it's usable, a decent gear range without the extra weight or unneeded complexity of a 3x. Let me get back to those tires for a second because small knobbies on a trail have some advantages. Along with lower rolling resistance, they're usually better on wet routes, more traction surface than big spaced out knobbies. The trade-off is they're less effective on loose dirt and in mud, and we've had weeks of rain and flooding, so it could get squirrely in spots. Now shifting through this ProRush 8-speed, it shifts reasonably well. Now, I'll be coming back to that, but it's a lot like the 7-speed version, meaning it moves through the gears about like a tourney with tourney-like sounds on bumps. Actually, and this could also be manufacturing variants, but this 8-speed, a little more chain slap than the 7-speed. Though no issues, 0 chain drops, and 0 unexpected shifts. Though not perfect. In its factory form, considering the $298 price tag, there's a lot of good to this as a rideable mountain bike. Geometry that makes it agile, and it's not super heavy. Comes in at 36.2 pounds out of the box, and I don't feel like it's going to self-destruct on every bump. So over the past few years, I've ridden plenty of big box bikes, and all 3 of these new Schwinns, including this Taff, they are a world apart from what big box bikes used to be. I love that now we're not only getting 1x bikes at these prices, but 1x bikes with a clutch. And by the way, video coming soon to show how to adjust the clutch lever tension, so keep your notification bell active so you don't miss that. Now this is a budget clutch, so it only reduces chain slap, it doesn't eliminate it, but still a clutch. Now I said there was something about the shifting, and let me talk about that. The boundary 7-speed, it shifts great, but this 8-speed, it gets a little different between 4 and 7. It shifts. But the tension on the shifter's triggers, well, it changes to where 4 through 6, there isn't really a firm click. It's almost like using a touchscreen with haptics turned off. So I find myself accidentally going up or down a gear more than I intend, again, only in that middle range, so kind of weird but worth mentioning. About the fork. First, I thought this to be the same fork as used on the new boundary, but curiously, I measured this with 60 millimeters of travel versus the boundary's 80, and I know I've bottomed this out quite a few times on the trail. I mean, the grease usually tells, and maybe the seals settled in before the full travel. And by the way, I wiped the left stanchion down early into the ride. No more grease, so the seals settled down on that side. I'm going to ask Schwinn for a travel spec, but for now, I'm stating 60 millimeters. Now let's talk about the taper and why the big deal. Well, first, this is a new benchmark price-wise for bikes that have them, so gauntlet thrown by Schwinn. And second, for people like me that like to upgrade our bikes as we go, a tapered head tube opens up many more possibilities. Plus, with these shipping adapted for a straight steer, it's the best of both worlds. So what's the like other than this taper? Well, those bars, 720 millimeters, right up my alley, and with that 31.8 millimeter capable stem, options aplenty. The 1x drivetrain, a little finicky but totally usable, and expect updates on that as I see if I can dial out the oddities. WTB tires, I suspect that these are licensed tires, meaning that they paid to use the WTB name. The clue, I can't find any information on Starflight on the WTB website. Still, these are great for light trail use. They excel on dry, hard-packed trails, less so on loose dirt or muddy areas. Now there is room up front for wider tires and a little in the back, though not as much. The wheels, I don't think Schwinn gets enough credit for these double wall alloys. They're really not bad. The one area I'd really like to see improvement is bring us a quick release instead of the bolt-on rear wheel. When it comes to that hunchback design, it sets it apart from other bikes on the Walmart racks for sure, so take it or leave it, but the frame appears to be well made. I already have plans for all 3 of these new bikes. 2 are for sure slated for project status. And now I want to know what you think. Is this new Taff worth the extra $50 over the new Boundary? And also, do you like that hunchback frame design? Comment below and let me know. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Make sure you're subscribed and you have that notification bell active so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching and have a great day.